Hello everybody, this is Kyrix with another one of my Star Wars book reviews. Audiobook reviews, that is. This time we are focusing on Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, So You Want to Be a Jedi. Name of the author is Adam Gidwitz, and of course the narrator is Mark Thompson, who I believe did the narration last time. Again, worth pointing out that despite it only naming one narrator, I'm pretty sure other voice actors were brought in. Brief summary of this is pretty simple. It's just an updated retelling of Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, told primarily from the perspective of Luke Skywalker with occasional side moments dealing with the other characters. Let's see here. My thoughts on this are that, first off, I'm going to tell you right up front, I do not follow the mainstream who are fans of Star Wars, because I don't like Empire. I really don't. I wish I could. I wish I could be one of those people. I'm actually similar with Star Trek that I don't really much care for Wrath of Khan. You know, it's just, for some reason it's just, oh, the number 2 is so good. It's alright. And it's one of those stories where I don't hate it, but it consistently lurks at or near the bottom of my favorites in the canon movies. In this place, with the 7 movies out right now, it sits at spot number 6. But, and it's kind of interesting because a lot of my favorite things, like the T-47 Airspeeder, which most people know as the Snowspeeder, or the Imperial AT-AT Walkers, are from that movie. And I love the Battle of Hoth, short and simple that it was. But that being said, the writing and delivery in this book are just so tremendously fun, to the point where, paradoxically, it ranks really high in my canon book reviews. Most of the high points of this book are, as I said, in the delivery, which is also the downfall of the book. See, the problem is, it really comes off like it's a children's book, which is funny because the previous book did not, or at least not as heavily. And, like, when it covers topics like the romance between Han and Leia, he's like, yeah, I'll skip the mushy kissing stuff. And I'm thinking, okay. There is also a rather notable point of historical revisionism, in that now it's very widely well known that Luke and Leia are sister and brother. Or brother and sister. Siblings. They're siblings. So in this book, they're written as, oh, I like her, she's great, but I'm not attracted to her, there's just this thing between us. When in the source material, including the novel, it was very much, oh, she's hot, must bone her before Han does. And naturally, they wanted to change that for this, so that's kind of a miss right there. But the book itself, very much a hit. Let's move on to scoring. Characters. Well, the characters are reasonably well handled, although with the previous book in the trilogy, nothing new is here. There's really no one focused on that wasn't in the movie. And that being said, while they're engaging, there wasn't as much new stuff done with them as in the previous book, The Princess, the Scoundrel, and the Farm Boy, where you get very much into their mindsets. However, I want to give special mention to the description of Chewbacca as looking like a barbershop floor stood up and is now fixing a starship. I'm really hard-pressed to come up with a better description of a Wookiee. 4 out of 5. Setting. Unlike the previous books of the series, which I will be comparing this to frequently, and likewise, Return will get the same treatment being compared to this and the first book. There's really nothing new added. There's no new planets, no new ships even. The bulk of the book is done from Luke's perspective, so as a result, they actually shave off parts of Han and Leia's story. So, it actually fares much worse in that regard. And they don't really go into much detail on Dagobah either, which is the area you'd think would get the most thing from Luke, but no. So that's a 3 out of 5. That's a major hit right there, or major hit to the score. Story. Now here's where we're really going to start taking some hits, because, as I stated, Empire Strikes Back is not a story I look back very fondly upon, even while wearing nostalgia goggles. Primarily because it lacks a lot of the things I love about Star Wars. In this case, there is no space battle. I love the space battles in Star Wars. There is a single lightsaber fight, which is good, but doesn't really hold up compared to the one in Return of the Jedi. And it fucking pales in comparison to the ones in the prequels. And while it lacks those things, it tends very heavily towards darker tones that I don't much care for. I'm not a root for the bad guy kind of guy. All my friends love the Empire. I was always rooting for the good guys. So I will say that while I am very biased in this regard, I will nevertheless state the story, with a handful of exceptions like the historical revisionism I noted before, is incredibly true to the source material. And I want you to keep in mind that my lowered score in this section does not reflect how good the story is, but the fact that I don't like the story. So I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. If you are a person who really loves Empire, think of it as a 4 out of 5. Now, the narration. This is kind of a gray area, because, as I stated, the narrator, who I think is supposed to be Luke, I think it's the same voice actor, quote-unquote, as Luke, and numerous hints are dropped that it is Luke, but it never outright states that it's Luke. And he frequently talks about Luke as though he's a separate person. But the narrator seems to be addressing children directly with this book, and putting it in terms that they're more likely to understand. And as a result, he spends a lot of time focusing on the exciting, thrilling, battle-y parts, and skipping a lot of the boring stuff like the romance and some, not all, but some of the character moments. And in addition, between the chapters, a Jedi lesson is given, and each one is signified by a letter of the Greek alphabet, like it's Jedi lesson Alpha, Jedi lesson Gamma, you know. And they're fun little additions to the story, but if you want a fluid retelling, they're just going to get in the way. And they can occasionally, when a chapter ends at a really heated moment, completely take you out of the action. Nonetheless, I'm still going to give them a 4 out of 5, just because I really like it. Now, lore. Is there new lore? Oh yes, there is new lore. The upside of this story being so Luke-centric is that far more time is devoted to his training on Dagobah with Yoda than other source materials, but it does take away from Han and Leia's story. And if I recall correctly, their escape from Hoth isn't even gone into until after Luke meets Yoda. They just kind of go back, like, here, let's backtrack a little bit and see what Han and Leia are doing. And while there is a lot more of his personal training covered, it is still maddeningly short on the details. I mean, there's... If I had to put it in screen terms, I'd say there's another 10 minutes of screen time for his training, you know, which is still not enough. And they did have a fun little story from Yoda, and Vader's torture of Han is given a little more screen time. Nothing graphic, not like the Leia moment, but it's just, you actually see some of what's going on with him. And while there is new lore, there isn't a lot of it, and they could have done so much more with it. So we're going to go with a 4 out of 5. Now, Immersion. Here we go. Based on the delivery of the narrator alone, this story had me hooked, and I have not been invested in this story since I first saw it back in the 4th or 5th grade. Worth mentioning, I came into Star Wars fairly late for a kid my age that grew up when I did. And as I stated, the Jedi lessons could knock some people out of the story a bit, but that wasn't the case with me. I found them fun and kind of quirky. And to me, it really fits because this is supposed to be the narrator, and I'm going to call him Luke, even though I can't say for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's Luke. It's supposed to be Luke telling this story to children who want to be a Jedi, and it's very easy to imagine that this is Luke Skywalker post-Episode 6 telling this story to a group of what are his first batch of Jedi younglings. So I'm going to go 5 out of 5 with that one. Now, the grand total. Grand total comes out to a 3.8 out of 5. Now, while the score is lower than the previous book, paradoxically, I enjoyed it a lot more. See, the problem with this scoring is it's supposed to represent my cold, hard opinion on the piece at hand, and will almost always more or less match my commentary. This, however, is an exception to that rule, because my cold, hard dislike of the source material, and in my attempt to fairly grade this book, is completely at odds with how much I loved the book itself. The problem here is with the 1 to 5 grading system, because if I were to rank it the way I feel, then Immersion would have been a 7 out of 5. But I don't want to be that, oh, I'm gonna I'm gonna break it. This is a 30 out of 5. Definitely read it. I don't want to be that guy because that's stupid. Why have a ranking system if you're not gonna follow it? You know. Likewise, the narration to me should be a 5, but I also recognize that the talking to children style could put off a lot of readers, and I adjusted it with that in mind. So if you're looking to this review to decide whether you're going to read this book or listen to it, take both my numbers and my commentary in mind when deciding whether or not to read this book, because my commentary recommends it very highly. My numbers, yeah, it's like, oh, you could read it. You don't have to. You're not missing much. You saw the movie. So there it is. And I will see you again sometime in the near future. Bye-bye, everybody.